An important point that I would like to explain to the public is what sort of cooperation is between European Commission, European Union as a funding agency and civil society, NGOs. I mean, we've seen teams working on the field for projects that are financed by European Union and to which there is a contribution also by the same kind of organization which do the work. But what I would like to understand better is the philosophy of this kind of cooperation, both in theory and in practice, how it should be and how actually it is.
For CONCORD, which is the Confederation of European Development NGOs, the starting point is not the funding, is not the contractual relation that some of our members, few, have with the Commission. The starting point is the EU institutions have a role to play to build that European Union conform to the Lisbon Treaty, and we as NGOs are part of a broad civil society sector in Europe. We represent citizens, and this is our starting point. We want, as citizen organizations, engage in dialogue, in political dialogue with the institutions in charge of delivering policy for the public, for Europe, but also policies with an impact beyond the borders. And that's where our core business comes for CONCORD, which is to look at the impact of European policies, not just aid and cooperation, but agriculture, trade, fisheries, security, migration. All those policies set by our member states and the European institutions have an impact in developing countries. So our main mandate, the mandate we received from our members, is to engage in political dialogue with your institution on all those subjects.
Can you give some practical examples?
So practical examples, there are some studies that show that the fisheries agreement that the European Union signed with some African countries, that don't name one specifically, but there is unfortunately very concrete examples in many countries, but are boosting and protecting and promoting the interest of our vessels, our navies of fisheries. They are in a way a deal where European Union buy the fish reserve of developing countries to allow our own European float to fish in their territory seas. What we challenge with our partners from those countries, civil society organizations and fisher organizations, is that this threatens the more traditional, artisanal fishery that exists along most of the coast of Senegal and other countries. So this is an example where a European policy with intention to defend European interests, which is fair in the political context of Europe, has an indirect effect, which is negative for developing country fishers.
Do you sometimes face a problem because you are at the same time representing organizations that receive funding from the European Commission or the European Union and thereby are somehow obliged to follow or be in line with the coherence in the policies of the European Commission, and the fact that they're asking their voices to be heard from the same donors of funding to them? Does it create any kind of tensions, and maybe they're not able to bring their voices because they're receiving funds from the same organization? Do you feel it kind of limits them?
Yeah, there is a tension, as you said. But back to our constituency. Who are our members? Our members are 27 national associations of development, international solidarity, humanitarian NGOs in Europe. There is one in each country, and big NGO families, networks that are very well known normally worldwide. Altogether, those organizations represent 1,600 NGOs. How many from those NGOs are receiving funding? Few hundreds, a couple of hundreds. So if you start by who we represent, on behalf of whom we are talking, the part of organization receiving direct funding from the Commission is not so high. Secondly, we have made, it's already a little bit old, but 5 years ago, a study on the level of EU funding within the overall budget of the sector across Europe. And the figures were very interesting. Less than 10% of the NGO funding is coming from the European Union. Almost 35% is coming from the national government. It's a big average. Huh? So, and then you can add 5% from UN organizations and agencies. It means that European NGOs globally receive half, more or less, a little bit less than half of their overall funding from governments, national governments first, European Commission second, and UN institutions, and more than half is coming from private donors, individuals donors. So what we call everywhere when we work with EU institutions and governments is a real partnership. A partnership where we put €1 on the table from our own private fund and we request governments to put another euro in front of it in a real partnership. And that should change the focus of our relations. We are not anymore talking about receiving everything from one or the other, but really, as in the private sector, you know, building a partnership also through the investment. And this is something that EC officials, EU officials, and national governments officials have still some difficulty to admit. We are in a partnership, we don't just ask money, we put money on the table, and we try to leverage with that own private money some institutional money. And finally, a word. This money is not the money of the EU institutions. It's the money of the taxpayers, the citizens of Europe, that have been transferred to some institutions with a very concrete objectives. And the objectives of the international cooperation are set in the Lisbon Treaty, they are set in the Development Cooperation Instrument in Europe. The fight against poverty is not something that just NGOs, you know, idealistic guys and ladies would push for. It's binding, it's on the treaty, it's on the instruments, and we just expect institutions to deliver